Welcome to another episode of Magnifico tells some black guys about history. That sounds edgy though, so I'm gonna make that the thumbnail. Okay.
You already know my debacle with church. I'm not a fan of church. I don't go to church anymore. For obvious reason, it's all
Dinner.
fake. But more.
Okay. There's an element where I believe Christianity is true, but I also think what he's talking about can be a lot of people's experience with church. Like if the churches you go to are like hyper dogmatic, if they're hyper like no, we're not going to discuss this. No, we're not going to entertain questions about the Bible or historical figures that we hold dear and near to our hearts. If they're willing to cover up stuff because for the sake of the witness of the church and the sake of the gospel, I get the notion that a lot of people come at the church as like that can literally be their experience, that the church is fake. And I hope like that has not been my experience. I think in a broader sense that is not true. But yeah, I can understand how someone would feel that, like depending on their own experience there.
So. Okay, well, no, I have to. I'd say one thing. Do you just enjoy antagonizing Christians?
Yes. So Baptists from Africa, Baptists from Jamaica, Baptists from Haiti are not gonna look. They're gonna be like, "You sing like that. What's that gibberish you talking about?" It's weird. Because you have to remember that black people hate everything about slavery except religion, right? So
I think that's an oversimplification. And again, I guess history is complex, but slavery was a two-sided mechanism. There were almost no raids into Africa. That was a full-on thing. The reason they didn't imperialize Africa immediately is because they would die very quickly. I think it was yellow fever or something, and it wasn't until later that quinine was developed that they actually went into Africa and imperialized stuff like that. Most times they literally just bought the slaves directly from the people. And there'll be some people who say, "Oh, they didn't really understand." Like, I don't know if that's the case. I feel like that's a very charitable interpretation. Here's the truth, hot take. I think it's a matter of not being racist. That I think if black people or any other indigenous group were in the position that Europeans were, they would have done the exact same thing. They would have done the exact same thing. All else being equal, if they were put in the same position with the same power, they would have abused it to the same extent. No more, no less. Right? They're not uniquely bad. They're not uniquely good. They're the same, right? Because I'm not racist, I think they're the same, and they would have done the same stuff that white people and Christians did.
they're really gonna look at each other.
Yeah.
No.
Yo.
But also, with regards to the notion of Christianity being like, I don't know if Christian. There's an element to be had where I don't think Christianity is necessarily responsible for any of this stuff. Did people use it? Did people twist it to their own purposes? Yeah. You do realize, though, the person who came, I believe Herbert Spencer, the person who came up with social Darwinism, kind of the basis for a lot of racism, like race realism, and probably to some extent Nazism, was not actually Christian, although his views on Christianity were they were kind of strange. You can look this up. I think it was some sort of weird blend where he wanted to mix science and religion and reconcile the two or something like that, which I suppose is, noble in its own way. But I don't. You can even find like letters, I think, from Hitler and things like that that seem to indicate that Christianity was not well suited to his purposes. And the truth is, people can find all sorts of reasons for being racist or, disparaging other cultures or whatever. I'm sure there are many secular cultures or communist people who really don't like other cultures and are quite racist. So I don't think Christianity is uniquely bad. The truth is, I think historically people do bad stuff and they find reasons to justify doing bad stuff. Was that the case with Christianity and slavery? Yeah, probably was. I think the idea would be actually that the unique breed of slavery that happened in America, that it was actually one race that was being exclusively almost dehumanized. Well, I guess the Indians kind of had that happen to them too, but they were kind of relegated to a level of subhuman, was because they had to find some way of taking them out of the category of humanity, because it wasn't okay to do those things to humans, right? It wasn't okay to enslave humans, so they had to create a subhuman category within their culture that made it okay to, yeah, we can enslave these people because they're not like, they're only partly human. Not good, but
You know what?
Chat.
I'm
Let me know if that was not a
you
bar.
tripping. Okay, can we just take 2 seconds? Because you did it last show too. I remember I told you last show, I'm like, if we're not gonna unpack it, don't bring it up. But if we're not gonna open that can of worms, why'd you pop the lid on it?
Hey, listen.
It's gonna spoil. And you brought it up again, which is okay. So let's unpack it.
Who can unpack it? Let's go, bro.
Look,
Yeah, no
for the
problem.
record, I will admit the first time I watched this, I was a little bit ticked off. I think I'm hopefully a little bit more calm now.
Okay, you can't throw a bomb and run.
Yes, that's how, you can't throw a bomb and stay there.
I actually kind of disagree with that. There's this element of, if you're going to raise some sort of claim or aspersion or whatever against blank, there's this element of, okay, unless you can bring to some sort of conclusive end, why make the claim, right? Why raise the claim if all it's going to do is piss people off and you can't, bring it to any sort of successful or peaceful resolution, right?
You know what? Hey,
defeat the purpose of throwing the ball.
wait.
What am I gonna do?
You're right. Yo, mute my mic. Mute my mic so I can shut the fuck up.
Am I gonna throw the bomb and stay there?
Yeah, you're right.
Who throws a grenade like this?
Why do you hate Jesus? You brought it up a bunch of times. We never talked about it, so I feel like today's your chance. A lot of
Here's a
Christians.
question: why is there like a? It's kind of cool, I guess. It's kind of modern arty, which makes me not want to like it, but actually it's kind of nice. But there's a portrait in the back. Maybe it was made by a fan or something. That's kind of.
I want to hear from you.
You start to ask yourself questions when you grow up in that environment. You start to ask yourself questions, and some things are just not making any more sense.
College atheist. It does feel like there is almost like a stereotypical type of, oh, I went to college and then I read Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and stuff like that, and now I know stuff.
You know what I mean? You try to analyze some things and it doesn't click. It doesn't make sense to you. Neil Tyson deGrasse said the best.
Neil deGrasse.
It's not for me. I have to shout him out because he said something that embodies what I think about church and Christianity. He said, do you believe in God, since you're a man of science? And he said, well,
if there is a God, God is either not all powerful or not all good.
And
I don't think he came up with that. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure he got that's something that's older. Maybe it is him. I don't know. I think that's kind of like has to do with the original, like, what was it? There's some paradox or something. Epicurean paradox, yeah. That's a lot older than Neil deGrasse Tyson, though. I don't think, but yeah, that's how we heard it from. So I probably no. For the record, actually, I think what he says there is functionally true, but actually wrong. I had mentioned this in a video I'd done previously here. Actually, I made a video on this previously where it feels like apparent from watching the Bible that God is hampered in some regards with his own nature a little bit, right? Like it's not like he can't do these things. Like he's not constricted by some external force. There's nothing greater than God forcing him to behave a certain way, but he does behave a certain way. I'd used, I think, the example of our own salvation, right? So God is placed in kind of a tight spot where he creates a creature who he loves, right? But that creature violates his own law. So God is just, he has a strong sense of justice, he can't just forgive us, but he also is merciful and loving, so he can't just kill us. Yeah, I had mentioned that too. He smited like quite a few people, but he has to find a workaround to forgive us without violating either his sense of love, like, well, to resolve that issue rather, because technically it could have been resolved a number of ways. But he wants to forgive us, so he has to find a way around his sense of justice, right? That makes sense. Like he has to find a way to resolve this situation. So again, what he says is functionally true. That it's clear that some part of God is more maybe a force of nature, and that in some regards God is hampered. So again, it's functionally true, but actually false. Like God is limited by his own nature. He's not limited by something external. So he's like, it's a little bit dubious as like to what you would say, but I don't think that's particularly controversial. It seems evident from reading the Bible that God can't just do anything. Can't might be the wrong word. God won't just do anything, if you will.
From the information that I have from church, these two things do not coexist.
Like believing that he's not these two things?
He's not these two things at the same time. And I have no evidence that he's these two things at the same time. If he's all good, then he's not all powerful. If he's all good, then he wouldn't let happen a lot of things that are happening right now. And if he's all
There's an element to the notion of, I think from a purely utilitarian standpoint, you tend to get very interesting notions of what good entails, and that any good God wouldn't allow blank to happen per se. Like they wouldn't allow, pain or displeasure because these things are definitely bad. I don't know if I would agree. Like I think anyone who works out kind of gets the notion that pain is not always entirely bad, right? It would be the idea of gratuitous pain or gratuitous suffering that comes into that as well. But again, like who's to say what's gratuitous? I guess I don't know.
all powerful, that means that he has the power to change all the things that are wrong, but he's not good enough to change them. Stuff like that, stuff that are written in the Old Testament, stuff that are written in the New Testament, and I'm just like, I don't identify with it anymore. And it's cool with other people.
Again, I think it's functionally true, but actually wrong. What do you say? To some extent.
That's one of the things.
And again, like it is no, never mind.
It's cool if other people are with it, but then I have another weird feeling as well when people from the Caribbean are the most religious people, and that religion was imposed to them by their masters. So, and I have an issue with that.
You're talking about
I don't know, unless there was like a you do this or else. I don't necessarily. Well, I guess obviously the slavery wouldn't have been exactly the prime. I do think there is such a thing as like predatory evangelism. And maybe I'm unique in that regards. I think some people would think there's never any bad way to do it. I think there is a bad way to do evangelism. And obviously, like a master slave relationship is maybe not ideal for that type of thing. But I also think like the notion of like religions evangelizing, it's just a thing that people do. And if it supplants the indigenous culture slash religion slash history, well, that is kind of a price of playing the game a little bit. All religions would do that if they, well, I think most religions would try to expand. Most of them do. I think Judaism is perhaps a notable exception to that, which we should look up sometime. Anyways.
I was introduced to black folks.
Yeah, I was introduced to Caribbean people. Like how I wasn't introduced to certain parts of Africa, not all the parts of Africa. I'm not talking about the Orthodox.
You're not talking about Ethiopians.
No, I'm not talking about them because I
shit.
believe that they're the original one.
There is, for the record, there is actually some really weird stuff in Africa, like almost like bizarre offshoots of Christianity. It's, if I remember correctly, there is some like really strange types of strains of Christianity that went into or that developed or went into Africa. I don't know. Maybe it was the result of the people that actually went to missionary or to evangelize there doing a bad job of it, or not doing a thorough like education of the scriptures. But man, I've gotten the idea there's some strange stuff going on. Some of those sects.
Emmanuel Selassie, Rastafari.
Right,
Anyways,
we've been
that's
having
just
Christianity. Don't play with
exactly.
me.
But what I'm saying is that it feels weird the way it was introduced, because it was introduced as a tool, right? And what the Caribbean are using is the Bible of the King James.
Am I blocking his head? Hopefully not. To be fair, I like Preach is the one doing most of the talking, so yeah.
The guy that killed his own mother. Fucking weird. More than that is that it was introduced to subdue us and to break us. They removed our roots and they removed our beliefs, and they proposed that.
Again, that's kind of what evangelism is. Now, for the record, there are certainly elements, I think, of indigenous culture that would have been benign, but I think, like, again, that like religions vie for supremacy. Let me rewind this. I think I was maybe missing some stuff in there.
It feels weird the way it was introduced, because it was introduced as a tool, right? And what the Caribbean are using is the Bible of the King James. The guy that killed.
Yeah, this is what I was actually going to remark. It is kind of strange, I think, in my mind, that like a lot of people do place a lot of, like, for the record, growing up, that would have been the only version I used. But it does seem kind of strange that like kind of almost a state-sponsored version of the Bible is like the one that a lot of people will go proverbial to the wall to. They will go to the wall for. Like, no, this is the only one. Because like if Trump came out with like a edition of the Bible, I don't think I'd be inclined to trust it that much. But I guess I don't know exactly what the origins of the King James version were. But again, the fact that it was a state-sponsored endeavor, maybe not great. Again, I don't know exactly what the thing is, but the fact that someone tacked their name onto it, like an actual king said, "Hey, this is my version." I don't know. Maybe it was just the times that they were in, rather than him saying, "No, this is my version." But that's another thing we should look up. It just feels like on principle, it's a little bit weird that we're so stuck on that version.
His own mother. Fucking weird. More than that is that it was introduced to subdue us and to break us. They removed our roots and they removed our beliefs, and they proposed that.
Again, like, Christianity is not unique in that regards. I feel like, again, this is an oversimplification of history. A lot of people found a lot of reasons to do a lot of bad stuff, and I'm sure, the enlightened communists have done stuff that's probably equally bad or worse, and used their communism, used their secularism or atheism or whatever to justify doing it. For the record, I think at one point in time, the notion of like polygenesis was very popular among atheist people. And the Nazis, for the record, they came up with a lot of scientific studies that justified them being, jackasses to different races, right? They need to come up with like secular ideas of it. But there's actually also another interesting notion that, like, I think they found Christianity so problematic for the purposes that they were coming up with like a Nazi Bible, which kind of like retconned Jesus' origin and like de-Judaized the Bible, I guess. Makes sense. That's also kind of an interesting facet of history. He looks kind of bored. I should get myself off the screen so you can see Abba's bored face. We'll minimize this a little bit more. There you go. You can see him a little bit more here. Huzzah.
Just to be able to be more docile. So to
what
me,
did they say about your roots and your beliefs?
What do you mean?
What did they say about them?
Well, it was demonic. It was not good. It was
again, evangelism. That's what we call evangelism. I'm pretty sure there would have been plenty of polytheists that would have said probably similar bad things about Christianity. And we only think of it now because Christianity has largely been ascendant. There's like not a lot of polytheists around. There's not a lot of other contending religions around. But I guess at least Islamic defenders can get quite feisty about Christianity. I think there's one guy that was saying that Jesus was the first transgender or something. Sorry, that's good. Yeah. Again, I think that's kind of the name of the game with regards to. Well, it shouldn't be the way it is. Perhaps I think people should be maybe a little bit more delicate sometimes. But for the record, with regards to worshiping demons, I don't even necessarily disagree with that. Now, if it comes to the thing of destroying someone's benign, like more benign aspects of their culture or history, I don't think that's good. But if it's regards to religion, I would say, yeah, anything kind of like it's religion. Again, name of the game, price of playing.
Evil,
Witchcraft.
witchcraft, which is not a reality, of the thing. And
That would maybe need some sources. You actually, after this, we might actually go into that, like African indigenous religions. That would be something I could search up probably.
And so when I see Caribbean people being very religious, to me, it's just like every night going to sleep and kissing goodnight the picture of your rapist. I know the image is crazy, but that's the feeling
Oversimplified again.
that I got. If I've seen someone do that, that's what I feel. That's visceral. I'm like, oh my God. Everybody in the world that are religious, they worship someone that look like them. You look like the Hindus, they look like them. The Buddhists, they look like them. The Muslims, they look like them. But people from the Caribbean, it's white. And you can even say, oh no, but it's my God is black, my Jesus is black. But your Bible is from was from the people that own you, and that's
No, actually, categorically, no. The Bible is from the Middle East. Jesus was probably, Mediterranean-esque, if you will. Right? The origins of it are Judeo-Christian. The origins of it have very little to do with. They did not originate in European culture. In fact, at that point in time, Europeans would have been the barbarians. I'm pretty sure that's literally where the term would have originated, where the Romans were going into the Goths and the Visigoths and conquering them. That's where the term barbarian would have originated. Like the people in Europe, the white people would not have been the civilized ones at that point in time. Like it's largely maybe forgotten today that's the case, but no, Christianity, Judeo-Christianity originated in the Middle East. Okay, so that's for the record. Actually, the picture I think of Jesus was one they had found. Like you'd have to look this up, but I think it's one they had found of some pagan god that they had discovered when they were going into Europe. I think in order to I don't know if it's in order to get them to accept Christianity or something, they took a picture of one of their gods, and that's what we think of as like Jesus portrait or whatever. I actually don't think it's necessarily at all true to life.
I'll say in Ethiopia we got a black Jesus. I know because every time I go into a church, it's all black.
Jesus was not black. He wasn't white, but he wasn't.
These people are not.
Oh, he looked like he got a forehead.
Yes, and I've seen that Jesus, and
I do personally like that. I think like the that's a personal thing. But
yes, but that's not the because there's an Ethiopian Bible as well. Because the Bible that we have in the Caribbean that we're using, the King James Bible, I believe has 66 books, and the Ethiopian one has 88. So it was modeled.
I told you there's some weird stuff that happens in Africa. I guess I don't know. Maybe that's just like the apocryphal works or something that they include in that.
And compressed and it's not the real thing. So I'm manipulation. Let me just get out of that because that's not me. So that's the reason why I'm just like, man. Okay. I'm uncomfortable whenever I see that. There's some part of churches I appreciate because I feel like the praise No, that's her sauce. That's her spice. We did that. We did that, and that's I appreciate. But other than that, everything that is said in there, the scriptures, the vibe, the hypocrisy, I can't deal with that.
I'm too white for Pentecostalism, for the record. No, I do not like expressing myself, so that's not my cup of tea. But I can appreciate it, I suppose, as a genre of Christianity.
So I got out of there, and that is why. So no hate to you, but I'm gonna remind you every time, and I'm gonna be petty about it. And I love when people say you're wrong, and then they just say you're wrong. It's
Hey,
like,
listen,
yeah, explain
you know
yourself.
what? I'm sure.
There's an element, like, for the record, I've been going pretty hard on like preach here too, but like there's an element to the notion a person can the means by which a person knows a thing is not necessarily the means by which they can communicate that thing to another person, right? I don't think he would consider himself a debater. I don't even know if I would consider myself a debater. But a person can know a thing and be perfectly valid in their beliefs and yet not be capable of convincing another person of those beliefs to some extent, right? It's not exactly the same skill set, right? And I think trying to convince another person, the means by which you can convince another person, it's a more circumscribed type of thing. Anyways, that's that. You can go look it up if you want. Why Preach Left Christianity Forever. So, have fun with that if you like.